Good morning. I am Brandy Foret, and I teach English 1 to 9th graders at St. Emma High in Ascension Parish. I am most passionate about connecting literature to life for students, and we're going to do that today with a poem by Edna St. Vincent Millay called An Ancient Gesture in the guidebook's curriculum. So as class progresses today in the video, we're going to work with vocabulary. Students are entering their answers from the previous night's homework in a quizzes, and then we review those answers. We move into an ancient gesture, and we complete a TP cast graphic organizer as we work through the poem and see how authors transform classic works into contemporary pieces. We have been studying the Odyssey, and we're taking a break from Odysseus's flashback in this part to focus on Penelope for a while. And consider what she's going through at home as she waits for her husband's return and how that connects to a modern audience. And then we finish up by writing a theme paragraph and a literary analysis about Bronx Masquerade, a contemporary book that we finished reading recently. Students at home, I have 5 students quarantined during this lesson, and they are working with a Cami file and entering their answers on the Google Meet chat box. And students in the room are working with this printed out packet that I use to get them off of their computers for a while, because they have been working on them quite a lot, and I'm concerned about them reading online as much as they have been. All right, we're just about at our 2 minutes. Remember, if your answers are on paper, this part is really, really fast. 92% accuracy is fabulous. Okay, so remember when you're doing these, you're going to read the paragraph at the top of the page to make sure you're seeing the words in context, because that's how you're going to expand your vocabulary. Just Googling every word you don't know is not going to help you expand your vocabulary as much as seeing them in writing. I was in the agenda for today. Okay. This author has us sympathize with Odysseus, right? So I want us to consider this quote and think about what this means in relation to him sitting with Alcinous and telling this story, right? So it says, but it is the Odyssey that most directly probes the theme of the war veteran's return. Odysseus returns home to a place he does not recognize, and then finds his homestead overrun with young men who have no experience of war. Throughout his long voyage back, he has reacted to each stranger with elaborate caginess, which means cautiousness, concocting stories about who he is and what he has seen and done. The real war he keeps to himself. Okay, so I want us to consider what this sentence is saying and what is being referenced here. So talk to your group first about what this is about. Like, what does this even mean? Talk it out.
When it said the bad sides, I was thinking about how all the shops he made before he got home after the war, and how bad those shops were compared to the war, I guess, something like that. Right. And coffee.
Yeah, how is PTSD from the war, and that's how it's everybody.
Yeah.
He is creating stories as he sits with King Alcinous and the Phaeacians, because this author is claiming the real war he keeps to himself. How did you make sense of that last part there? What is the real war that Odysseus is keeping to himself? That was obviously very damaging, and then we talked about how a lot of today's veterans deal with this. What do we call this in today's society? Lots of mental health issues with this. So PTSD. So Odysseus in this scene is seen as a grieving veteran, right? It encourages us, this article, this paragraph, encourages us to feel sorry for him, to sympathize with him as a warrior, as a veteran, right? Like when you're doing that kind of project, the fulfilling part is the completion, like seeing it get done. Penelope is undoing all of her work, or at least some of her work, so that it's not super obvious what she's doing to the suitors as she goes. All right, so that's kind of what we are focusing on in today's poem, because we're looking at how contemporary authors revise or revisit or rework old classic texts. And that's what this poem does with the Odyssey. So anytime an author refers to something that the audience is expected to know, what is that? Allusion, right? So we've seen that already. We read Ithaca in the beginning of this. The whole poem refers repeatedly to concepts in the Odyssey, and those concepts were hard for you to understand or catch because you weren't familiar with the classic text yet. Now we know what the Cyclops is. We know what the Laestrygonians are. So we have a much clearer impression of that poem as this story goes on, because those allusions are going to make sense. All right, this one is called An Ancient Gesture. What do you think that might be about? So don't open it up, don't look at it yet. But based on the title, talk to your partner, your group. I feel like this title is pretty straightforward. But anytime you read a text, you want to look at the title first, right? So what are we predicting this is going to be about? Go.
There's like some form of non-verbal communication. It's like from long time. So maybe like something between two like groups, and like the only way of communication is through like body language and stuff.
All right, so who is I? What did you come up with? What is the speaker doing? What's the action? She's crying. And what? No, she's not watching Penelope cry. She just knows Penelope did this. Alright, so she is comparing herself to Penelope. But this is a contemporary poem. So who in today's society do we compare to Penelope? Lawyers? Wives of people in war. Okay, single mom is a good shot. Okay, the key here is that this is from the perspective of the wife at home. So Odysseus is not communicating with, and it's different in today's society because the poem was written in the 1950s, before cell phones, before you could FaceTime your loved ones overseas while they were deployed, right? You were relying on letters, and most of those letters, even today, they can't tell you where they are most of the time. And you're at home, you're waiting for them.
Yeah.
Remember, there's a shift, so consider that too. Like, more than one of you can be right, because it starts with one tone and then kind of shifts to another.
It's still sad. I think it like shifts Oh yeah, you're bad, and some people are doing negative.
I think melancholy is a good word. Much better than sad.
But make sure to put the tone in the A tone.
Opposite perspective of Odysseus, or an opposite view of Odysseus than that first quote. Okay.
She's making it a lot more positive. She's probably saying that. She's probably saying like he's brave and he did it, so it's okay for me to do it. Does that make sense?
Repeated words. Any repetition. There's a polysyndeton. See that? What is the repeated word in this first stanza? And. Okay, so what effect is this creating? Like, what tone did you come up with for the top of this? Y'all were saying that? She is melancholy, right? She is sad. Okay. Okay, so let me read it with the ands and see if you feel it, because she's more than melancholy here. Alright, so it goes, I thought as I wiped my eyes on the corner of my apron, Penelope did this too. And more than once, you can't keep weaving all day and undoing it all through the night. Your arms get tired and the back of your neck gets tight, and along towards morning when you think it will never be light and your husband has been gone and you don't know where for years, suddenly you burst into tears. There's nothing else to do. How is Penelope feeling? How is this author feeling? She is stressing. Awesome. She is overwhelmed by the situation. And I think everybody feels like this, right? Like, I think I did this yesterday. I have to do this, and then I have to do that, and this, and this, and this, and it's just piling up. That's what she is acknowledging that this speaker is going through. All right, so we see more positive phrases in the second stanza, right? Hopefully you have more plus signs down here. What are my positive phrases here?
Authentic.
Authentic.
Tradition.
Tradition. Antique even sounds better than ancient, right? Like when we have something really old, we want it to be an antique. That's a much more positive connotation for something that is just really old. The best tradition, but only as a gesture. What does that mean? Fake. Awesome. Fake, right? So this author is interpreting Odysseus' tears in this scene as not genuine, right? He's doing it for attention. But who is really overcome with emotion? Penelope. Penelope is the one who is home, worried, sick, doing all the work, dealing with the suitors, right? While Odysseus is getting all the glory. So have we seen reason to not trust Odysseus as a character already? Sure, right? So this impression of this hero is not altogether unfounded, for sure. How has your understanding of the title of the poem changed, and what could be a theme of this one? So those last two T's, I want you to work on together with your group again. The reference page that you have, the abstract words. This theme was the biggest shortcoming in your narrative essays for your benchmark, and I know that that's particularly tricky, right? So anytime you're thinking about theme, what is a theme? The lesson that the reader can take away from the text, right? So you want to start with an abstract noun. What are we learning about? What concept are we learning about in this poem? So start with that, and then construct your thematic statement, maybe using these basic steps. This is like a very simplistic guideline of how to write a theme statement. You're going to want to use the same theme resource for that last paragraph of your literary analysis about Bronx Masquerade. What big lesson do you think we're supposed to learn from Bronx Masquerade? What are we learning from a text about a modern day English classroom? And the students who occupy it. I understand that it was something that took out the Alright, everybody at home, make sure you're sending me that file on Candy, please. Not the essay. The essay is not due until Friday. The graphic organizer for the poem is due today. So overall, I think the lesson objectives were met in this lesson. I was particularly interested in seeing how they did with the thematic statement part of this, and they did improve, looking at the graphic organizers for this poem, and they continue to improve on the Bronx Masquerade paragraph that they worked on at the end of this lesson. The following day, we peer edited those and gave feedback to each other on thematic statements, and that concept continued to get better. I would have done things differently in regard to the communication skills here, so I would have preferred them to turn their desk and get closer together, but with COVID restrictions, that was trickier. But we do work on eye contact and communicating effectively over the course of the semester. And I would have given my online learners a little bit more of my attention if I could go back. But overall, I feel was an effective lesson.